Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. Asher was in good spirits. It had been a while since he'd felt this way, but the information had hit the mark, and he welcomed the mission as a break from the usual. He'd thought he'd lost touch with any compassion over the years, but maybe there was still a spark of it left. His targets were going down, no question about that, but he could afford to hold back his final move, unless they pushed him to it. He hummed the theme from Cops as he walked, a smile tugging at his lips. The day was cold, with the wind biting at him as he headed toward the municipal court complex. The door slammed behind him as he entered, and the guard greeted him with a broad, approving smile. Asher smiled back and placed his purse on the security conveyor. The guard helped him slip off his fur coat. "Let me take that, Any jewelry could set off the detector," he said, offering Asher a plastic bin. Asher removed his necklace but left his earrings in place. He thanked the guard. After clearing security, Asher stepped into the ladies' room to freshen up. He touched up his makeup and ran a brush through his hair, satisfied that despite the weather, he still looked fantastic. That setting gel had worked wonders, and he made a mental note to thank Bob for the tip. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, a rare luxury in the old court building, Asher admired his reflection. His modest heels added a few extra inches to his 5'7" frame, and he approved of the image he'd crafted. Today, he was the distressed mother of a rebellious teen, and he was going to own the role. Another thank you to Patrick for the fur coat, it was perfect for the winter chill. With his appearance in check, Asher stepped into the lobby, walking with just the right amount of sway in his hips. He loved the feel of heels on the floor. The judges' chambers were on the 6th floor. Asher rode the brass-railed elevator alone, impressed by how smoothly it ran, despite being much older than he was, almost as old as he felt. Court of last resort. The judge had been on the bench for over 15 years, and the mother in front of her was a familiar sight. She often wondered why it was always the wealthy who turned to her when their children misbehaved. She had a reputation for helping troubled boys, and word had spread. She never questioned why only the rich thought to ask for her help. "Mrs. Delacourt, may I call you Amy? I understand your son has been in trouble before, and you've tried other programs." "Yes, Your Honor. Amy's fine. We've tried several programs, but he's been expelled from all of them. He's not violent, just very strong-willed. He's my husband's child, and I'm so close in age to him, I think he resents me being with his father. This latest incident, date force, car theft, resisting arrest, he's only 15. Please, what can I do? My husband's out of the country and suggested I listen to my cousin's advice." Asher's voice wavered just enough to convey helplessness, though playing older was always a challenge. Fortunately, Asher had learned from the best. The judge reviewed Brandon Delacourt's criminal file, which stretched back to when he was 9. It was thicker than some gang members' records. But there was nothing indicating danger, just reckless behavior. She wasn't convinced the charge would stick and thought it could be beaten. She didn't want to put the accuser through the ordeal of facing the Delacourt defense team. She didn't question whether the accusation might be false. The judge knew the Delacourts by reputation, wealthy, private, and influential, but also willing to lend a hand when it suited them. She had verified Amy Delacourt's connection through her cousin, who was set to inherit the family fortune. She recalled the cousin's heir, Charles, who had been part of the judge's special program. He was now poised to inherit one of the largest fortunes in the state and marry a woman carefully selected to keep him happy. After a bit more discussion, the judge decided to take action. She reassured Amy Delacourt that there was hope and mentioned a program specifically designed for troubled young men. She had Amy sign several documents, one of which would temporarily transfer legal custody of Brandon to the headmistress of the special academy if a court order was made. After Amy expressed her gratitude and left, the judge called her clerk to have the case moved to her docket. Then, she made a call to the academy. "Asher of the morning. Asher stood at the train station, his leather jacket protecting him from the wind gusting off the New England concrete. He'd chosen the all-black look to channel the bad boy vibe: black leather, black jeans, black sneakers, black t-shirt. His shoulder-length brown hair was tied back, and the only luggage he had was a small gym bag slung over his shoulder. He had to project confidence, even if it was just a facade for the anxiety underneath. He was playing the part of a 15-year-old, which wasn't too difficult given his appearance. He had a baby face that made him look younger than his actual age, and though he only shaved every other day, he knew it wouldn't change anytime soon. He'd arrived on an earlier train than planned, wanting to scope out the station. Despite his resolution not to, he was tempted again to smoke, a bad habit that still lingered in his mind whenever he was stuck in airports or stations. Asher smiled to himself, realizing it had been years since he'd last smoked, back when he was 12 and his mistress had encouraged the habit. His mother thought it made him look sophisticated. But Patrick, his foster dad, had put an end to it in just 3 tough weeks. A large town car pulled up, and a tall, commanding woman stepped out, followed by a pretty teenager. Asher noticed the younger one was convincing enough as a girl but still had some telltale signs. It was in the little things, like how the boy closed the car door, that gave him away. The pair looked as though they had stepped out of a 1950s fashion show, their outdated clothes giving off a sense of old money with questionable taste. "Are you Brandon Delacourt?" the woman asked, her tone crisp but lacking warmth. Asher shot her his best sneer. "I was told not to talk to strangers, and you're the strangest one I've met today." With that, he turned his back, anticipating what would come next. It was hard to brace for an attack when you knew it was coming, but Asher had been trained to handle just that. The woman spun him around and slapped him across the face. He exaggerated the hit and fell to the ground, knowing it would satisfy her need for control and make the blow seem more powerful than it actually was. He let himself sob and made sure some tears came out. The boy in the skirt helped him up, playing his part in the good cop, bad cop routine Asher knew all too well from his training. "I will not tolerate that form of disrespect, Master Delacourt," the woman said coldly. "I have papers assigning me as your legal guardian. You will come with us now. If you wish to leave, you can do so once I've explained the terms of your court-ordered stay. And I do not discuss business in public places. So, come with me, or I will leave you here for the police as a probation violator." Asher opted for silent defiance during the car ride. The boy had been introduced as Barbara, and Asher played along with the ruse. The woman was referred to as Madam J. Asher figured they'd come up with some feminine name for him soon, maybe tomorrow. One problem with having a method was that it made you predictable. Asher had debriefed Charles Delacourt, Brandon's cousin, who had graduated from this very academy. Charles had been the one who, after joining the group, led them to take an interest in the academy. Asher loved it when the intel was solid. So far, everything was unfolding as expected. Asherina, Louis Prima. Asher was shown to his quarters, which looked like something out of every mother's dream for their little girl, a room filled with ruffles, lace, and an overwhelming amount of pink. Barbara chattered about preparing to meet Madam J in her office in 10 minutes. Asher quickly stashed 2 packets from his gym bag at the bottom of a drawer. He left the rest of his things, fully expecting them to be gone once they drugged him. By 5 p.m., Asher stood in Madam J's office as she casually criticized his behavior and mannerisms. Asher had to admit, she was good. Most 15-year-olds wouldn't stand a chance against her psychological tactics. But Asher had grown up dealing with adults who treated children as objects to control and manipulate, so he wasn't easily rattled. "Master Delacourt," she said, her tone firm. "You're here because your mother has allowed me to correct your behavior, and the judge has ordered this instead of sending you to a juvenile facility. If you refuse to comply with my requirements, you'll be sent directly to prison. I want your word that you will cooperate, or I'll have no choice but to send you away. If not, I'll be calling the appropriate authorities to deal with you tomorrow. Do you understand?" She was playing the role of the psychological dominatrix to perfection. Asher shot back with as much attitude as he could muster. Nice try. Call the cops if you want. You want my word? Here it is, go screw yourself. He knew the slap was coming, braced himself, and then fell to the floor, kicking off his sobbing routine. An older woman entered, her French accent giving away her origins. She gripped Asher's arms tightly, as if they were locked in a vice. It's too late to send you out tonight, Madame J said with a smirk. You'll be fed, then sent to your room. Maybe tomorrow you'll be more open to a civil conversation. Asher felt the effects of the drug in his food begin to take hold. As Barbara led him to his room, his legs felt heavy, and he could barely move them. He collapsed face first onto the bed, thinking to himself, barbiturates, as he drifted off to sleep. Around 3 a.m., Asher heard Barbara enter the room. She took everything from his bag except for his toothbrush and removed it all from the room. Asher pretended to remain asleep as Barbara and the French woman struggled to undress him. He was glad he had hidden a spare pair of sneakers under the bed's box spring. At 7 a.m., Madame J entered his room, yanked the sheet off him, exposing his body. Asher quickly grabbed the sheet to cover himself. Brandon, your lazy days are over. Get up, clean yourself, wash that filthy hair, and put on some clothes. Meet me in my office for tea in 20 minutes, Madame J ordered, her tone cold and demanding. But my clothes. They're gone. Asher whined. I can't help if you misplaced your clothes. Take something from the closet after you shower. And make sure you use shampoo. Stop worrying about me seeing you, you're just a boy, after all, not much to look at, Madame J said, her voice dismissive. Asher knew she was lying, he was very well endowed, and he'd seen her eyeing him before. But those are girls' clothes. Asher protested. If you stay here, that's all you'll wear until you learn how to behave. We'll discuss whether I'll let you stay or send you to jail, Madame J snapped before turning and leaving. Asher retrieved his hidden packets from the drawer. He showered but avoided the shampoo, opting to use his own soap from his stash. He suspected Madame J's mention of it was part of the setup. He quickly dressed in one of the ridiculous dresses from the closet and secured the packets inside a petticoat with Velcro tabs. Then, he added a camisole slip and slipped into the dress. Sitting at the vanity, he applied his makeup, brushed his hair, and smiled at his reflection. He finished the look with his hidden sneakers over his hosiery, knowing the next step of the plan was about to begin. Though he didn't need to get dressed for the plan's next phase, he did it anyway, enjoying the opportunity to get one over on Madame J. He finished blow-drying his hair and noticed his door was open. The French woman was waiting in the hallway, her shadow visible and her perfume filling the air. Asher hummed to himself, bad boys, what you gonna do when they come for you? Heavenly host descends. Asher wanted to leave the French woman in decent shape, so he sprinted for the window. As she reached out from her hiding spot, he jabbed a stun gun, hidden in his packets, into her solar plexus, while simultaneously striking the side of her neck with a firm blow. She collapsed immediately. Asher dragged her back into his room and injected her with a hypodermic, ensuring she'd be unconscious for a while. He found Barbara in the kitchen, preparing tea. Asher grabbed him from behind and injected him with another needle. He gently set Barbara in a chair, closing his mouth to prevent him from reacting. Asher quickly swept the house, checking for anyone else, and then keyed his radio. He brought the tea set to Madame J's office. As he neared the room, he heard the faint sound of helicopters overhead. Asher grinned, singing "The Boys Are Back in Town" under his breath. He decided to make a dramatic entrance. He opened the door quietly, then kicked it with enough force to rattle the hinges. "I heard you wanted some tea, you pompous windbag," Asher yelled, throwing the open teapot at Madame J's face. The liquid splashed mid-air, and though she tried to duck, a good portion hit the top of her head. Asher smiled as she screamed, savoring the moment. She charged at him, but Asher easily sidestepped, delighted by how the situation played out. Her assumption that the tea was scalding had fueled the panic, which was exactly what Asher had hoped for. "Gonna slap me again, honey?" Asha taunted. As she swung her arm, Asha moved faster than the eye could follow, grabbing her wrist mid-swing and stopping her dead in her tracks. She squealed in pain. The problem with learning a little martial arts is when you face someone better than you, it's easy to hurt you, Asha said. So, you can keep trying to fight me, or you can sit down and shut up. I have a lot to say and not much time to say it. The woman sat down, her eyes burning with fury. Asha grinned, looking every bit the picture of innocence in his frilly dress and perfectly applied makeup. He proceeded to duct tape her to the chair, thoroughly enjoying the process. Taping her mouth shut felt almost intimate in a way, something deeply satisfying about it. Was that satisfying for you, sweetheart? Asha asked in a smooth, mocking tone. Her glare could have burned a hole through him, filled with sheer rage and madness. Well, little missy, that tape doesn't quite match your outfit, does it? What are we going to do with you? You've made quite a mess, getting yourself all wet. How clumsy, Asha said, mimicking the French woman's voice with an exaggerated flair. Asha shifted gears suddenly, his tone becoming sharp and serious. Now that I have your undivided attention, it's time for you to hear someone else for once, someone who's not trapped in their delusions. Let's begin, shall we? Your days of tormenting young men are over. You've been targeted for a little discipline that you seem to lack, a discipline that allows boys to be boys. Allow me to introduce my group. We're all victims of women who tried to mold us for their own pleasure, and now we've made it our mission to deal with women like you, wherever we find them. That's my job. Normally, I just shoot you, but over the years, you've kept your sadistic tendencies brief, letting your victims go on with their lives. So, you get a bit of mercy. We also know you use your victims' fear of exposure to cover your tracks. So we'll end this now, leaving you with your life. And remember, Asha added, his voice turning cold, if you ever try this again and we find out, you'll be killed, without hesitation. Asha listened to the chatter in his earpiece. They're telling me your friend, the judge, has just been arrested for kidnapping Brandon Delacourt, who's believed to be in the area. I'd like you to meet him now. Another group member entered, leading a 7-year-old boy dressed just like Asha, in petticoats and a frilly dress. His long blonde hair had been recently extended. Brandon, is this the woman who kidnapped you and made you wear these ridiculous clothes? Asha asked. Brandon nodded and left with the other agent. You see, here's the thing. One of our members does a pretty good impersonation of you. It was a real treat watching him mimic you, kidnapping that child, drugging him, and telling him how he was going to be made into a girl because boys are evil. You thought Brandon was a 15-year-old delinquent, didn't you? Too bad about all the narcotics found in your house. And I believe the FBI has frozen all your assets for drug trafficking. It's also interesting that when your former students were given the choice to either be exposed as victims or as willing participants, most of them chose to be labeled victims, detailing your little tortures for the media. I'll give you credit, about 10% refused to expose you. Oh, and we've made sure the media got all the information, with the best images going to the racier tabloids. Especially the video of you threatening a 7-year-old boy with jail, calling him by name, that one's a classic. Our cameras at the train station really captured your dramatic flair. Asha held up the hypodermic needle, showing it to her. You'll be sleeping soon. The heroin and cocaine mixture will be in your system when the FBI arrives to rescue little Brandon. We picked those 2 drugs specifically because the public is familiar with them. We wanted to make sure there was no confusion about who you are. Oh, and I saw those books on your shelf, Petticoat Discipline. The mistress my mother sent me to when I was 8 had the same ones. She was a bit more direct than you, using a cattle prod on me whenever I didn't dress just the right way. In many ways, she was just like you, but with more compassion. Remember this, I'll kill you if you ever try this again, once you're over your little legal troubles, of course. Asha administered the needle, and as Madam J passed out, he removed the duct tape. He left the room, walking past Brandon, who was now loosely tied, his face resting on the unconscious French woman's thigh. There was a pile of cocaine on the table and heroin scattered on the floor, a perfect scene for the tabloids, almost as if it were staged. Asher and his crew left the house and climbed into the waiting helicopter. Barbara, already strapped in, was sound asleep. As they flew at 1,200 feet, Asher saw a line of state police cars, unmarked SUVs, which he knew were DEA and FBI, and media vans rolling down the driveway. He had endured the jabs from the other group members about his outfit, but Asher figured Madam J deserved punishment for her poor taste, too. He began singing Bad Boys, Bad Boys. But the noise of the helicopter blades drowned him out. Off-duty Asher. Patrick was still recovering from a long illness that had drained him for years. Despite his fatigue, he felt a sense of warmth seeing his adopted son, Asher. A mix of pride and guilt swirled inside him as he reflected on how he had set Asher on this path, a path that Asher followed with such single-minded focus. It often bordered on coldness, something that unsettled Patrick. He knew Asher wasn't a sociopath, but to do his job, he could easily act like one. I gather the Delacourt family is one I wouldn't want to make an enemy of, Patrick remarked. How's their little boy? He'll be fine, Asher replied. We didn't terrorize him. We made him dress up a few times. Victor was unbelievable as Madam J. Honestly, he scared the hell out of me. It might have been more merciful to just shoot the woman, Patrick said quietly. I don't know. It's a mess. Besides, I'm sure she'll be painted as insane, and she is. You know half the charges won't stick. The only way she'll see any time is if she covers for her friend, the judge. It'll take her some time to get her money out from under the feds, Asher continued. And the Delacourts have made it their mission to ruin her in the business world. So she's going to be broke for a while. Asher smiled, amused. This indirect havoc thing is almost more fun than the direct action stuff. I understand Charles Delacourt has decided not to go through with his engagement to one of Madam J's followers. Is that true? Patrick asked. Old Charlie played her like a fiddle. Once he came out and denounced her process, he pretty much sealed her fate. She lost her shot at the social register. Consorting with kidnappers, child molesters, and drug dealers, oh my. Asher finished the sentence with a perfect Judy Garland impression, grinning widely. Patrick's expression shifted, suddenly serious. Asher, do you think you'll ever do enough to make it all go away for you? Patrick asked, the question he'd promised himself he'd never ask. It already has, Dad, Asher answered, his voice soft but firm. But there are so many more little Ashers out there. And we're all they've got. No one else seems to care. Both Patrick and Asher knew the truth. Asher was lying. It would never go away for him. Patrick was over 50, and it hadn't gone away for him either. Asher glanced at Patrick, whose waist-length hair gleamed in the light, looking comfortable in his black tights and shirt dress. Asher adjusted his skirt and checked his reflection in the window. He thought about how strange the group was, a brotherhood bound by the pain of the past, using that pain to try and heal wounds that would never fully heal.